Hello everyone, and today we're going to be talking about a deck that does it all, branded heroes. Now, this is a very interesting mix of two very popular deck types, the branded Decimate, which was for the longest time tier 1, as well as heroes, which is a very interesting mix. I didn't realize this was a valid mix until it nearly beat me in round 2 of the CG Open Invite, which is the event we're running. If you don't know what that is, I just made a video all about it, and you can also hop in our Discord to learn more about it. But yeah, this is a deck that we sort of took the idea that almost beat me and we made it even better. So now the deck is significantly more consistent. What you're aiming to do is you're aiming to set up your Mirror Jade, which is very easy, alongside having 1 or 2 of your hero boss monsters, all of which are hyper impactful. You're either going to have DPE, which will be freely popping cards in your opponent's field and coming back every single turn. DP is incredible. You're going to be having Dark Law, which I think out of the 3 is the single most impactful card. This is a counter to Runics, this is a counter to Eldritch, this is a counter to zombies, this is a counter to anything and anyone who would even look at their graveyard. And then you've got Destiny Hero Plasma, which is just skill drain on legs. It's got the ability to negate all of your opponent's card effects, only your opponent's, and it's also able to suck up your opponent's monsters and boost its own attack points according to half of theirs. So 3 really hyper impactful hero monsters that you're able to very consistently summon, because Branded Fusion enables the deck to play off of Shadow Mist a lot easier. It gets access to all of your hero plays much more consistently. Now, we're going to be doing a deck profile at the end. I would recommend watching the gameplay because the deck isn't super easy to pick up. You're going to want to see it in action a couple of times before you play it yourself. It's not the simplest deck in the world, but at the same time it is so much fun and it is very powerful. I was accidentally ranking up just practicing with it. So no, this deck is absolutely insane. If you like seeing profiles like this where we're looking at cool little mixes and niche deck types, feel free to subscribe and like the video. You can leave a comment as well in terms of what types of decks you would like to see in the future. I always like seeing what people are playing, what people are up to, because everyone always has the most sort of unique ways of going about things. This was a whole ton of fun. I couldn't take a deck that was as powerful as this, that almost completely destroyed me in the tournament that we're running, and just allow it to go. So this is my take on it. I'm not going to take up any more time of the intro. If you want more specifics, wait to the end. We're going to do a big profile on it, but do watch the gameplay because you're going to need the context. Otherwise, it's just going to go over your head. But with that, let's get into game number 1. Alrighty, hopping into our first game here. This seems like a somewhat mediocre hand, but honestly, we've got everything we need. We're able to go Branded Opening into Aliber, search for Branded Fusion. This is the card that gets everything going. Branded Fusion, send the Fallen of Albaz, as well as the Shadow Mist to the graveyard. Shadow Mist will activate to search our deck for the Vision Hero Vion. Vision Hero Vion then is going to get our whole engine going. So now Lebellion's going to shuffle back to summon out the Mirror Jade, which is great. Shadow Mist then grabs us the Vion. We're able to normal summon the Vion. We're able to send Malicious from deck to graveyard. Then we're going to activate, banishing the Shadow Mist to search our second polymerization. And we're going to activate Malicious in the graveyard, banish it to summon another to the field. Then we're going to polymerize using our Malicious and our Aliber to summon a Despian Quiritis. This is going to help solve a big problem because now we're going to mass change into Masked Hero Dark Law. We're going to summon it in defense, but it has a petty 1800 defense, but the fact that Quiritis is able to reduce the attack of all opponent monsters to 0 is going to pose basically a large problem to our opponent trying to get rid of our Dark Law. So that's pretty good. Our opponent just couldn't do anything. I just wanted to show this off to sort of get a quick preview of what the engine does. You're able to see how everything sort of blends together a little bit. Usually the additional hero monster you go into, or monsters you go into, is dependent on whether or not you have things like a hero lives or mass change or something like that in your hand. Depending on which one of those you have, that's going to dictate which of the hero monsters you end up summoning, but you're almost always going to be able to bring out either Dark Law or DPE or Plasma, maybe even multiples of them, alongside a Mirror Jade. And that's pretty good. That's really good, especially considering Darklaw's interaction with the metagame at the moment. I'm not going to do a big breakdown of it here, but that was just a quick preview of that particular sort of way of doing it. Let's get into game number 2. Now I know what you're thinking. Does the deck work against back row based strategies as well? Well, let's find out. We're going to summon out Stratos to search our deck for Shadow Mist. This is amazing because now, whenever we summon our Libellion, we can use Tragedy to search an additional monster, and Libellion gets to pitch the Shadow Mist to grave to search our deck, which is great. We also hard drew into the Fusion Destiny. If you hard draw in the Fusion Destiny, you are loving life. It is so powerful in this particular version as well, more so than ever. We're going to bring out the Mirror Jade here. That's going to trigger Shadow Mist to grab Plasma. Now we're going to go Fusion Destiny into our DPE, of course, sending Malicious and our Denier to the graveyard. And we're going to use Malicious in the grave, banish the special summon. Then we're going to use Denier in the grave, special summon, and then return Malicious back to the top of the deck. And now we have 3 monsters on our field to tribute for our Plasma. We've got Plasma, DPE, Mirror Jade. We're going to summon another Malicious just to banish it off of Mirror Jade to set up the Branded Banishment trap card as well. This is, the Branded Banishment is really, really good, especially in a meta filled with anti-spell fragrance for people who are trying to counter Runic. So our opponent here, they're going to open up with the Pot of Extravagance, drawing an additional 2 cards. That's fine. Then they're going to try and use their Torby. We're playing against Labyrinth. This is a decent chance to use Call by the Grave. I'll be perfectly honest, I'm not uberly familiar with Labyrinth, so I don't know if that was the best play, but it seemed like a pretty high value play, so I went for it. Our opponent unfortunately has Lord of the Heavenly Prisons. That really does slow us down because our DPE now struggles to get rid of his back row. He tried using Call by the Grave to stop our DPE, which is a real pain, except we got that Banishment. This is another big reason as to why I favor this card in most situations over the Branded in Red, even though Branded in Red does generate a lot of value alongside Ad Libitum. I think generally speaking it's fine. We still get the destruction effect of the Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. We still get to revive the Denier here during the standby phase, which gives us additional fusion material should we need it. So we've got the Polymerization in hand, we've got Despian Tragedy in the graveyard. We might as well start generating advantage. We activate Polymerization. That's when our opponent unfortunately chains the Trap Trick. Lord of Heavenly Prisons protecting his back row from being targeted so long as they're set really hurts the viability of DPE in this matchup. So we're just sort of maintaining our resources to see if we can push through the back row and go for lethal. We summon Masquerade because we know we're going to get nuked. We might as well take a little bit of his life points with us. DPE then and Mirror Jade are both going to activate their effects in the graveyard. His dragon chandelier looking thing is also going to add itself back to hand. So our opponent, you know, they sort of, I don't know if they won that exchange necessarily because we still get our DPE back during the following turn. We're not out of resources and we still have the banishment. So we're still in a decent enough position. It could have been better, definitely, but it could also have been worse. We're going to activate our DPE here. Yeah, the pop itself and the face down, I don't know what, yeah. So we chained it to the Heavenly Prisons so that whenever it was actually face up and revealed, it was no longer protected, essentially. We had to hit it while it was unprotected, otherwise it would have been too late. Not that it matters, our opponent's just going to go for another copy of it anyway, but we've got Branded Banishment. We're going to grab the Ad Libitum from the graveyard, Fusion Summon into Quiritis, and then that's going to trigger Ad Libitum's effect to summon Mirror Jade back to the field as well. So we've got Quiritis, we've got Mirror Jade. At the end of the turn, our DPE's coming back. Sorry, during the next standby phase, not the end of the turn. We've also got DPE coming back. So Quiritis, Mirror Jade, DPE through a Torrential Tribute, through the initial sort of turn wipe as well. So that shows how the two sort of decks interact. The Despian engine not only gets the hero engine going because it sends Shadow Mist to the graveyard, it also really assists in the recursion of your deck because Quiritis is constantly bringing back your monster, or sorry, Quiritis is protecting your Plasma and your Darklaw and everything from battle destruction. Your Tragedy is setting up your Banishment. Your Banishment is protecting things like your DPE from Call by the Grave. You've got your Ad Libitum bringing back your Mirror Jades, bringing back your DPEs. I don't think it brings back Darklaw actually. I think it needs to be level 8 or higher. But you know what I mean. There's a lot of synergy between the two once the engine actually gets going, and it sort of focuses around the DP in particular, but also Dark Law and Plasma to a lesser extent. But yes, fantastic game number 2. Let's get into number 3. Alrighty, we've got Duel number 3 here, and yet again, a really powerful hand. We got that Branded Fusion on deck. I only played like 7 or 8 games of this deck, so I think I got decently lucky when it came to my opening hands. But it's not like, I wasn't cherry picking for good replays, it just happened to work out this way. Lebellion, then shuffling back for Mirror Jade as per usual. Mirror Jade, let's not forget how powerful that card is, despite how easy it is to summon. It's broken. We're going to go Vion here to dump the Malicious. We maybe didn't think about that one too heavily, because our Fusion Destiny now doesn't generate as much value, but it is what it is. We probably should have searched for the Plasma in that instance instead of going for the Vion, but it is what it is. It was a learning experience. Like I said, I'm brand new to this deck, just like everybody else. Our opponent here is going to go Super Poly into this 3-headed thing that I'm not going to mispronounce. This guy is nuts. I love this card. Really, really cool. Our opponent's going to go Darkest Lair, which I thought was really funny because I came into this match right after attempting to play Darkest Lair and getting my ass kicked. So I know, fine rightly, this deck ain't that strong. We bring out the DPE. DPE pops itself on the field spell, and our opponent doesn't have very much going for him anymore. So very, very, very swift game number 3. We would have had the option to not only use our DP as an interruption by itself, but we also would have been able to Super Poly it using the Branded Banishment with his monster and fuse the two of them together. But our opponent didn't want to give us the opportunity to do that, so they scooped it up. But yeah, again, really swift game number 3. That's about as simple as it gets, to be honest. I just love this Branded Banishment card. Let's get into our 4th and final game. Alrighty, getting into our last game of the video here. We've got that Branded Fusion on deck. You're always going to have Branded Fusion, because if you don't have this card, you're going to have Branded Opening, or you're going to have Aliber, so you're always going to have access to this. And we also have the Call by the Grave there, just in case our opponent got any ideas. We're able to use Lebellion and our Shadow Mist yet again. Mirror Jade like clockwork coming out here, searching our deck for the Vion. Vion plus Mass Change is amazing. We're going to send Malicious here, and then we're going to banish for Poly, but we're going to hold off in terms of using any additional resources. We could have extended further there, but we decided it's maybe not worth it just yet. We think Dark Law plus Mirror Jade is going to be more than enough, and sure enough, in this particular matchup, you're going to see what we're up against. He's going to go Upstart Goblin here, pay 1,000 to draw 1. That triggers our Dark Law to pick a random card in his hand and banishment, banish it, and there is the Runic cards. Now, Dark Law is a big counter to Runics. Why is it a counter to Runics? Because all of their spell cards are going to the banish pile instead of the graveyard, and our opponent realizes that really quickly and scoops. If they don't have the negate or the pop Runic card, they're done. They just can't do it. They're done. Because they can't recycle any of their cards. All of their spell cards get banished. It is a full macrocosmos. Nothing survives. Dark Law is amazing. Plus, like, the snipe out of the hand, that is really strong. Like, anytime they add a card from their deck to their hand by card effect, once per turn, Dark Law gets to randomly banish a card in their hand, which is really good. But anyway, that's it for the gameplay. They were all really short games because this deck is just Scoop City. Nobody wants to endure the beatdown you're putting them under. So let's get into the deck profile. Alrighty, so getting into the deck profiles. Now, we're going to do the first thing first. We're going to remove all the fluff. That's our hand traps, our interruptions, things like that. So we've got the double Effect Failure, the double Maxi, the double Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. We've got the double Called by the Grave and a singular Cross Out Designator. So that means that if you want to play it strictly to 40 cards, you have 7 spots in here that you can do whatever you want with. It's not as much as we're normally used to. But that's just because the engines of the deck take up considerably more space. There are certain things you can cut. For example, the Fright Fur engine is not mandatory, although it is very helpful. I'm a big fan of it. It just generates a whole ton of card advantage. But that's entirely up to you. If you didn't want to play the Patchwork engine, you can cut that out, and that gives you 11 spots to play with. That may be a lot more comfortable to some people, but I really like Patchwork. So getting into it then, we're going to separate this into 2 distinct parts. First thing is first, the Despia. Everyone knows Despia branded. This contains a lot of the core elements of a Despia branded deck, simply because the deck has the room for it and it can afford it, and they're very powerful plays. So the Singular Tragedy, whenever it's sent to the graveyard or banished by a card effect, you get to search your deck for a Despian monster, normally ad libitum, but you basically get to send this from the deck to the graveyard off of your branded fusion to get searching your deck for cards. You can also banish it from your graveyard on the following turn to reset one of your branded spells or traps. So this card generates a lot of advantage very quickly, so I'm a big fan of Tragedy at least one. Usually there is a backup target of your branded fusion, although normally you'll be sending Shadow Mist, but again we'll come back to that. So Tragedy at 1. We're playing Fallen of Albaz at 1. You might want to play this at 2. There's a lot of situations where I open up with this card and it's costing just an additional card out of your hand whenever you're using your branded fusion. You might want to play this at 2, but I think 1 is fine for now. Until you get hit with Call by the Grave, and then you're in trouble. So we've got the Alibra then as next. Alibra is the only 3 of we play of when it comes to Despia. Basically on summon, search your deck for a branded spell or trap. You're going to search for your branded fusion. If you already have branded fusion, you're going to search banishment. You're going to search branded in red. Whatever suits your fancy, as long as you've got branded fusion, that's the most important thing. Alibra then will lead us directly into ad libitum, which is usually the target you'll search off with Tragedy. Basically, when this card is involved in a fusion summon, you can resummon a level 8 fusion monster or a Despia monster from your banish pile or your graveyard, which means you're usually able to recycle your Mirror Jade or your DPE, which are both very, very powerful cards. There are also other targets like Dragostapelia. You unfortunately cannot use Darklaw because it's a level 6, but all of these other big, very powerful targets are definitely fair game for the ad libitum. Then we've got, of course, the 3 copies of Branded Fusion, the card that makes it all work. Everyone knows how this card works, but in case you've been living under a rock for the last 6 months, Branded Fusion basically allows you to send the Fallen of Albaz and any other monster from your deck to the graveyard in order to fusion summon a Fallen of Albaz related fusion monster, so one of your branded dragons. Usually what you're going to do is summon Lebellion, which means the Fallen of Albaz combined with any dark monster. That usually means either Tragedy or Shadow Mist, depending on which one you want to use. It usually depends on your hand, but that is where the flexibility of Branded comes in, being able to send any dark monster to the graveyard. We've got then Branded Opening, which is limited to 2. The double Branded Opening basically allowing you to special summon the Alibra straight out from your deck, which will then search your branded fusion. So this is just an additional 2 copies of Alibra in practice. Then you've got your 2 branded, I say trap cards. One's a trap, the other's a quick play spell card. So Branded in red will allow you to basically, during your opponent's turn, the 2 cards are very similar. During your opponent's turn, because you can set it, you'll be able to return a Despia monster or a Fallen of Albaz from your graveyard back to your hand, and then you'll conduct a fusion summon using your hand and field by banishing all the cards to fuse out whatever it is. So that's normally where your ad libitum comes in. Everyone is very familiar with that play. That's very well played out. I'm not going to spend loads of time on it. The Branded Banishment then is similar in that you target a Despia or a level 8 or higher fusion monster, which could mean DPE, as you saw in the gameplay, back to the field, and then you get the ability to fusion summon using monsters on the field as material, and on the field means your opponent's field as well. It's basically a super poly, except you also get to revive something from the grave. Very, very, very powerful card. I'm a massive fan of this card, to be perfectly honest. I love it. And both of them are searchable, very easily set off of your Mirror Jade's effect. So that's the main deck branded cards. Again, nothing revolutionary. Anyone who has ever played Branded or Branded Despia or has played Ranked in the last millennia knows exactly what Branded does. Getting into the hero engine, which makes it a little bit more special, we're going to start with our key hero cards, which are these 3 here. These are our engine cards: Stratos, Vion, Shadow Mist. Shadow Mist is very good in that when it's sent to the graveyard, you get to search your deck for any hero monster. So if it's in your hand already, you can discard it to use the effect of Lebellion, which we'll get to, or if you don't have it in your hand, you can pitch it from deck to graveyard using your Branded Fusion. So there's a multitude of ways of getting Shadow Mist into the grave, and it will then search your deck for a hero monster after it's been sent, which will vary depending on the hand that you have. A very solid target for this is your Vision Hero Vion, who when summoned will send a hero monster from your deck to the graveyard, which will be the likes of your Malicious. He also has the ability to banish a hero from the graveyard to search your deck for polymerization, so you'll end up banishing your Shadow Mist most of the time to search for poly. We also have Stratos, which is a decent normal summon as well, but most of the time you'll be using Stratos through the use of a Hero Lives, which we'll get to in a minute. This guy on summon has 2 effects, but the only one you'll ever really use is the summoning of a hero the adding of a hero monster from deck to hand. That's how you're going to search for your extra cards like Plasma, like Vion if you haven't normal summoned it, Shadow Mist, Malicious, whatever it is you want and or need, Stratos will search for it. So basically 3 very powerful engine cards working around a small Destiny hero engine so that it all works together. We've got the Denier and the Malicious. These are the monsters you're going to fuse together to summon DPE. These 2 here. Why those 2? Well, Malicious will banish itself from the graveyard to summon a second copy of Malicious straight from your deck. Denier then is going to, whenever you control another Destiny hero or have one in your graveyard, you can summon this guy to the field and then he will reset on top of your deck the banished Malicious, which will give you the ability to utilize this effect yet again. Very, very good, not once per turn or limited in any way. So this little combo is fantastic. It's a good way of putting lots of monsters on your field so you can tribute summon for your Destiny hero Plasma, or if you've yet to summon DPE, polymerize your Malicious and your Denier together to summon out your DPE. So this engine here generates a lot of card advantage and is very, very efficient at summoning DPE and Plasma. Plasma, of course, being the big boss of the main deck heroes, in that while it's on the field, all of your opponent's monster effects are negated. It's a skill drain on legs and can suck up your opponent's monsters, gaining half their attack points. So it's basically just skill drain on steroids. You'll love to see it. A hero lives. If you have no monsters, pay half your life points to summon an elemental hero straight from your deck. That is normally your Stratos to search your deck for another hero monster, or it can also be Shadow Mist if you need to grab yourself a Mask Change, which is the next card we're going to talk about. Mask Change is going to send a dark hero from your field to the graveyard to summon out your Dark Law. That's all it's there for, and it's searchable through special summoning Shadow Mist off of a hero lives. So there is some synergy there. You can cut this down if you want. I know the Discord member who originally built the deck only plays this at 1. I like it at 3. I like opening it up. Okay, and in terms of the main deck, the one thing we've left to talk about, Fusion Destiny. Again, you'd have to have been living under a rock to not know what this does. You're going to fusion summon using your 2 Destiny heroes in deck. Definitely the most powerful card in the main deck by a country mile. So, brutally powerful card. And then the last thing is just Freight for Patchwork. So, the very efficient engine. Freight for Patchwork, when you activate it, will add an Edge and Chain and a poly to your hand, 0 cost. Great, +1, love to see it, and grabbing a poly. Edge and Chain, when sent to the graveyard, will grab you a Patchwork. So there's another, it's sort of replacing itself if you need to discard anything. And it's as easy as that, just a way to get additional monsters, additional polymerization to extend your plays. As simple as that. Getting into the extra deck, so this is very similar to a basic sort of branded deck. We're playing the Dark Law, of course, which is a hero exception. Summon it off of Mass Change is 2 main effects. 1, if your opponent adds a card from their deck to their hand by a card effect, once per turn you get to snipe a random card out of their hand and banish it. Really powerful effect. Second effect, which is even more powerful, is as long as this guy is face up, any card that would be sent to your opponent's graveyard is instead banished, which is amazing. This makes this a runic counter, it makes it an eldritch counter, it just makes it an absolute nightmare to play against. So really powerful card, brutal. You might even want to play this at 2. Your boy can't afford it, but you know, if you have 2, play 2. Really good card. Dragstapelia is a target to summon off of your branded banishment. Basically just a monster negate, everyone knows Dragstapelia. Albion is purely here to be sent to the graveyard off of your Mirror Jade, which will, during the end phase, search your deck for one of these 2 cards, banishment or branded in red. That's it. Despia Coritus, we saw in the gameplay, is just a generic Despia monster, very useful to summon off of banishment, but he's also very useful in that it can somewhat protect monsters like the Dark Law or the Plasma from destruction by battle. So it will reduce the attack points of everything that isn't a level 8 or higher fusion monster to 0 which basically means that so long as your Dark Claw is in defense position, all of your opponent's monsters, all of your monsters as well, become 0. Yeah, but you're in defense. Now they can't destroy your Dark Claw by battle. And they can't destroy your Plasma by battle, even though it's only gets 600 defense. So that's the idea behind Quiritis. It helps protect those bigger monsters that might otherwise be vulnerable to a quick and easy summon and swing. You've got the DPE, you do not have to play 2. I play 2 because I love this card and I will abuse it. If you want to play a second Dark Claw, I would cut 1 DPE, but I don't have a second Dark Claw, so I'm playing 2 DPE. Basically, again, everyone knows what this card does. Pop a card you control, pop a card your opponent controls, and whenever he's destroyed, he comes back during the next standby phase. Really powerful card. Single-handedly, what makes heroes worth playing. Honestly, heroes are good with Plasma and Dark Claw, yeah, but if they didn't have DPE, they wouldn't be worth playing. We've got Masquerade, another generic Despia fusion monster. Despia plus any light and dark, great target off of banishment. Helps deal some chip damage in these situations, but ultimately not too important and not too powerful. Sometimes it's useful though, so I would definitely play at least 1. It's a fantastic target off of branded banishment at the very least. Then we've got Mirror Jade, the main attraction of the deck. Quick play, banish any card on any monster on the field, and by sending one of these guys from the deck to the graveyard, so you're going to be sending your Albion, which is going to search for some of your other really powerful branded cards. Mirror Jade is incredible. Generating advantage, it's so easy to summon off of Lebellion, and honestly, completely just game breaking. Fantastic card. It's not broken by any means. It is definitely, it's just like spot removal, but it's spot removal that is non-targeting banishment, which is insane, and it also nukes your opponent's board when it's sent to the graveyard or banished by their card at the end of the turn. All of their cards get destroyed, all of their monsters. There's just a lot going on. It's such a powerful card and comes as part of such a powerful engine. Really is very impressive. Lebellion is the other key to that engine. So basically you're going to fusion summon him using branded fusion, and then this guy's going to discard a card to shuffle himself and your Fallen Valbaz back into the deck to summon out your Mirror Jade. He's purely just a fusion step. Don't worry about this guy too much. You've got the Alba Lunatus. This is, honestly, it's a bit of a niche card when you actually summon it. If you're playing against a very dragon-heavy opponent, sometimes it can be good. But most of the time you're sending this from the extra deck to the graveyard off of Mirror Jade in order to search your deck for Fusion Destiny or Branded Fusion. Honestly, that's what it's used for most of the time. Then the remaining cards. Then we've got the Predaplant, that thing, Trifoveratum, whatever that is. Basically just another super poly target, or sorry, another branded banishment target. 3 dark monsters on the field, so you can utilize a lot of your opponent's monsters. It's pretty big, plus it can negate the summon of a monster from the extra deck, so pretty good. Chimera, everyone knows Chimera. It's due to be summoned off of branded in red specifically, because branded banishment cannot use your hand, so branded in red is the only way to summon it. Basically, you have to use at least 1 monster in your hand, at least 1 monster in your field, 3 monsters in total. For every monster on the field you used, pop a card. For every monster in the hand you used, draw a card. Pretty simple. Also, if you have Poly in the grave, you can't be targeted, so 3300 attack cannot be targeted and is popping 1 or 2 cards, drawing 1 or 2 cards on summon. Really good. And then we have Verte Anaconda as a last minute throw-in. If you have absolutely 0 way of going in the branded fusion, you are almost assuredly going to have a way to get in the Verte Anaconda, because there's only so many combinations of 5 cards that don't contain branded opening, Aliber, or branded fusion that you can draw into. So you'll be able to summon Verte, worst case scenario. But that is the deck. I appreciate I was rambling there for a long period of time. It's a lot of information to take in. It definitely takes a bit of practice. You're going to pick this up your first couple of games. It might not go very well. You need to practice with it a little bit more, but it is definitely very powerful, and it's prone to more optimization. Like I said, this is still a relatively new deck even to me, so if you want to watch this deck develop, watch it get better, I'm going to be playing this more on the channel, especially live, whenever we're live streaming later this week. I think it's going to be Thursday when we're streaming. So if you want to see this deck live in action, make sure you catch the stream on Thursday, and you can also hop into the Discord to catch me and anybody else in the Discord who may be playing it, and all of us would be more than happy to help. That's everything I have to say for now, though. If you like what you saw, if you watched this far through in the video, you might as well subscribe. I mean, come on. It doesn't cost you anything. It just keeps you on top of the latest content coming out, latest Yu-Gi-Oh! Sort of cool deck lists and things like that. If that's what you're interested in, subscribe and leave a comment. Why not? And I guess I'll see you on the next one. See you then.